So recently, I've found and been informed of some really weird things involving explosive ammo that might change up your loadout meta for Extinction. These things also apply to Cryptid Slayer ammo, because CS ammo is literally just explosive ammo with extra effects tacked onto it. This new stuff contradicts with some parts of my big-ass spreadsheet, but I'm going to try to update it with this and some other stuff soon. So there's two weird things going on with explosive ammo. First, explosive ammo, and Cryptid Slayer ammo as well, of course, both have a built-in 10% damage multiplier. Throwing explosive or CS ammo will just straight up increase your gun's damage by 10%, unless you are a weapons specialist. Because the second and much weirder thing about explosive and CS ammo is that they both ignore the weapons specialist's 20% and 50% damage boosts that you get from having an upgrading class. So what does this actually mean in game? If you aren't a weapon specialist, going from any other ammo type to explosive or CS ammo is a 10% increase in damage. If you're a level 0 to 3 weapon specialist, going from any other ammo type to explosive or CS ammo is effectively an 8.3% reduction in damage, because you're replacing the 1.2x damage boost from being a weapon specialist with the 1.1x of explosive ammo. If you're a level 4 weapon specialist, it's much worse. Going from any other ammo type to explosive or CS ammo is effectively a 27% reduction in damage, because you're replacing the 1.5x multiplier from being a maxed out weapon specialist with just the 1.1x of explosive ammo. And this is almost as bad as equipping the Do Less Damage relic, which would be a 33% reduction in damage. This is all really odd, so if you want proof that this really is how it works, you're looking at it. It's the background footage. You can see that when I'm playing as a non-weapon specialist, the VKS went from dealing 483 damage to the Ancestor with regular ammo up to 531 with explosive ammo, a 1.1x multiplier, or you could think of it as a 10% damage increase. When I'm playing as a level 3 weapon specialist here, the VKS goes from dealing 579 damage down to 531, a 0.917x multiplier. You just get that from dividing the damages. Or you can think of it as an 8.3% damage decrease. When I'm playing as a maxed out weapon specialist in a bit, you'll see the Maverick that I use goes from dealing 144 damage to 105 damage, a 0.73x multiplier, or a 27% decrease. You can see the effect is the same with Cryptid Slayer ammo and explosive ammo, although it does become a little trickier to observe good numbers with the CS ammo, as the fire is constantly dealing damage and changing the HP readout of the Ancestors Challenge. I want to give a shout out to Meeskly. He's a Japanese Extinction YouTuber that initially made me aware of this with a video he made. The links for that's in the description. And he also showed me the Japanese Extinction wiki page, which has some stuff that the English page doesn't. And not everything on there is super accurate, like there's some sus damage multipliers for the ammo types, but it's got a lot of good details and is cool to read, so that link's in the description as well. So, how does this new fact that using CS ammo as a weapon specialist tanks your DPS change the meta of the game? Well, as a weapon specialist, CS ammo dramatically lowers your DPS against individual enemies, which means that AP is probably the better choice if killing individual large enemies like rhinos and mammoths are your biggest problem in a run. For speed killing, barrier hives and ancestors, incendiaries are your best bet, as you can squeeze out a little extra damage with the fire. But in my eyes, CS ammo is still very viable in a lot of situations, because despite it lowering your damage against individual enemies, it still has a lot of potential against crowds of medium-sized enemies. The arcing stun ammo does a ton of damage, and all of the enemies hit by the lightning bolt are also set on fire. And furthermore, the explosive ammo means that you don't even actually have to hit an enemy to deal a ton of damage to a large group of them. For example, Awakening likes to swarm you with huge crowds of hunters and stuff as you crank up the difficulty, and a VKS with an arc would be very effective in that situation with Cryptid Slayer ammo. Also, as a kind of weird bonus trait of this whole mess, you can just leave your weapon specialist class at +3 and invest those extra 3 points into other parts of your loadout, since getting the +4 upgrade wouldn't help your damage because of CS ammo anyways. The much better upgrade path with the CS ammo is of course still a nice bonus as well. So one more thing is, you know how everyone thinks the reason the Bulldog is so much weaker with CS ammo than it is with any other ammo is because the slugs just do so much less damage than the buckshot? Well, it turns out the slug actually does more damage than the buckshot. On the Ancestor Challenge, The buckshot deals a max of 720 damage if all 8 pellets hit, and the explosive slug does 770. The slug's base damage is just barely slightly less than the buckshot, by like 3%, but thanks to the explosive ammo's innate 10% damage boost always being there, you're actually getting a 7% damage boost from the explosive slugs. However, once you put the explosive ammo in, you also lose the 50% damage boost from Weapon Specialist, so it effectively is a 0.71x damage multiplier, or a 29% decrease in damage from what you're used to from speed killing stuff with an armor-piercing bulldog. So yeah, the shotgun slugs are actually good, it's just this combination of explosive ammo and Weapon Specialist that's bad. With this new information, I also need to make a correction about the Engineer's +4 explosive damage multiplier. I previously thought it was a 10% damage multiplier, however, I now know that's not the case. What I thought was the Engineer's damage multiplier, applying to explosive ammo, is actually just explosive ammo's default 10% damage multiplier. So what does the Engineer multiplier actually do? Well, it turns out it's an absolutely massive 2 times damage multiplier, but it only applies to a select number of things. I'm showing you videos of how I found this out using propane tanks against the first barrier hive on point of contact. What I did was I just blew up 5 propane tanks on the hive as both a medic and a maxed out engineer and measured how much the health bar went down. On my TV, the medic trial did 7mm of damage and the engineer trial did 14mm of damage. So now the question is, what does this absurd damage multiplier actually apply to? I tested it pretty thoroughly over the course of 2 days, and what it applies to seems very arbitrary and random. So, to just go through this list, it works on the canister bomb and the bouncing Betty, but not the Semtex and the Claymore. No matter whether you had the Engineer +4 or not, the Semtex always seemed to be 1 grenade and 2 knives. The Claymore was always 1 Claymore explosion and 3 knives. The Panzerfaust down here was always 1 rocket and 1 knife. But it works on the Cassette. The Cassette went from 2-shotting to 1-shotting a hunter as soon as you get the buff. So that's just confusing. Obviously it works on the propane tanks, because that's what I used to find out what the buff was. And it doesn't seem to work on the SOFLAM though. This is an interesting part. It works on 3 out of the 4 craftable schematic explosives. So it works on the pipe bomb, the sticky flare, and the disruptor grenade, but not the venom grenade for some reason. And also interestingly, the sticky flare is insanely powerful. I think the sticky flare might be like the single most powerful explosive in the game, maybe. It'll 2-shot a mammoth once you have the Engineer +4 buff, which is just ridiculous. And then, yeah, it doesn't work on the explosive ammo and CS ammo, sadly. That would be insane if it did. It works on the IMS, so if you have Engineer as one of your classes, you don't need to upgrade your IMS to make it start 1-shotting hunters, which is cool. It doesn't seem to work on the grenade turret and portable turret +4 though. This gives the portable turret explosive ammo, which sucks, but you know, we'll deal with it. The mortar strike was kind of hard to test because you know the mortars fall in like kind of uncontrollable locations, but I tested it against mammoths in like the really tight chambers on Awakening, so I'm pretty confident in saying that this mortar strike gets the buff. The Vulture was another one that was kind of hard to test because obviously it's an AI controlled rocket and it sets the enemies on fire, which does more damage, but whether you had the buff or not, it was always in the range of 1 rocket plus 2 knives, so I'm pretty confident in saying the Vulture rocket does not get the Engineer +4 buff. The Trinity missile seems to, according to it 3-shotting down to 2-shotting a Phantom on Awakening, but no one ever should use the Trinity missile other than as a meme, so that's fine. The Moz rocket gets it, which if you want to do the Disruptor Infinite Moz glitch on Exodus, you can get a little more out of the meme with Engineer +4. This is an interesting one. The MK32 does not receive the Engineer +4 buff. If you notice the MK32 becoming more powerful over the course of the game, it's actually the +3 upgrade, not the Engineer class. See, the +3 upgrade, the one that gives it fire grenades, it tells you that it just does like more total damage thanks to the fire, but what it doesn't tell you is that it also increases the damage per shot by 67%, which is enough to make it start one-shotting hunters. So you, if you're going to do an MK32 only run, because those are pretty cool, you don't need to be an engineer. You can be a weapon specialist and then upgrade it to the max level, because then you'll be able to handle that reload a little better. Disruptor, I wrote him as Wisp and Ball. This just means like the small one shot, and this means the large 10 shot. I just didn't want to write that whole thing out because it'd make this this cell super wide. They don't seem to receive the damage boost from explosive either, just like by reading it off the challenge. And then the Venom X was kind of an interesting one. I tested it on the Mammoths in Awakening, and it went from 4-shotting the Mammoth to 3-shotting it, which we would expect it, if it's getting a 2 times damage buff, we'd expect it to go from 4-shotting to 2-shotting. But I guess it's possible that the Venom X dealing like the residual gas cloud damage was messing with the results of the test, but at least what I was able to make from it is that the Venom X seems to get a damage buff from the Engineer, but it also seems to be a little weaker than the other buffs. Like, it's probably around maybe 1.5x instead of 2 for the Venom X or something. And that only seems to apply to the explosives. I think it shouldn't apply to the gas cloud damage. So I went through a lot in this video, but just to sum it all up, explosive and Cryptid Slayer ammo boosts your gun's damage by 10%. However, they also ignore the 20% and 50% damage boosts that you get from having and upgrading the Weapon Specialist class. The Engineer plus 4 explosive damage buff is a 2 times damage multiplier, not the 10% damage multiplier that I thought and like have previously stated it is, but it only applies to these select explosives. Thanks for watching.